Back in the 50s and 60s, the 4th of July wasn't complete without a full spread straight from Betty Crocker's kitchen. Today, we're dusting off those old red and white cookbooks and stepping straight into your grandma's 4th of July kitchen. Some recipes you'll remember fondly, some you won't. And some recipes folks just don't make anymore. Oven-fried chicken. Oven-fried chicken was a game-changer for 4th of July celebrations in Southern homes. Instead of sweating over a hot stove while fireworks were being set up outside, cooks could rely on Betty Crocker's clever twist: chicken coated with crushed cornflakes or cracker crumbs, brushed with melted butter, and baked until golden. This recipe was revolutionary, not just because it cut down on grease, but because it let moms everywhere reclaim their hosting duties. Instead of hovering over the stove, they could pop a tray in the oven and get back to setting the table or refereeing backyard squabbles. Plus, it freed up the stovetop for all those sides that made a Southern spread legendary. Vats of baked beans, macaroni salad, maybe even a pot of greens. These days, folks often opt for drive-thru or deli chicken, but nothing will ever compare to the homemade version. Classic potato salad. Let's talk about the potato salad that didn't need a dozen trendy ingredients to be perfect. Just potatoes, eggs, a little celery, and a creamy dressing that could make even the most hardened Yankee ask for seconds. In the 60s, this salad was more than a side. It was a peace treaty at family reunions. Every family had the best version. And woe unto the cousin who tried to outshine Aunt Sylvia's secret mustard blend. The color was usually pale yellow, the paprika was mandatory, and the bowl had to be chilled within an inch of its life. There was no skimping on mayo. Some folks added sweet pickles, others swore by dill, and some kept a box of instant potato flakes on hand, just in case, though that was spoken of in hushed tones. It was reliable, hearty, and somehow always gone by the time you got back for seconds. Served in an enamelware bowl on a folding table, it didn't need any frills. These days, folks often turn to store-bought potato salads, but they can't hold a candle to the real thing. Deviled eggs. If Southern gatherings had a currency, deviled eggs were high dollar. Neatly halved, perfectly piped, and dusted with a whisper of paprika, these little bites vanished faster than a June bug at a frog party. In the 60s, deviled eggs weren't just an appetizer. They were a rite of passage. You learned to peel eggs without pockmarks, mash yolks to silky perfection, and argue over whether relish belonged in the filling. It did. Probably. There was always one aunt who brought the deviled egg platter with the little indents and never left it unattended. Kids snuck them when backs were turned. Adults tried to pace themselves and always failed. You could count on them to hold the line between waiting on the grill and actually fed. They were humble, homespun, and full of flavor. These days, deviled eggs come pre-packed at the grocery store. But it's just not the same without the squabble over who gets the last one. Bisquick Hot Dog Rolls, pigs in a blanket. Before frozen party appetizers were a thing, Bisquick Hot Dog Rolls were a mom's best trick. With nothing but some biscuit mix and hot dogs, you could have a tray of golden, dough-wrapped wonders ready before the kids even finished setting off firecrackers. They were crispy on the edges, soft in the middle, and perfectly suited for dunking in whatever condiment was within reach. It was picnic magic. In the 60s, they were hailed as budget-friendly fun, and they lived up to the hype. No toothpicks, no fancy dips, just handheld joy in every bite. They could feed a crowd or distract a bunch of rowdy cousins until the burgers were done. And there was always that one kid who bit the ends off first, like some kind of reverse squirrel. These days, folks grab the frozen kind in a bag, and no judgment, but homemade just hits different. Skillet fried corn. This was the corn that didn't need a cob to be the star. Cut fresh off the ear and tossed in a skillet with bacon grease or butter, or both. This dish was pure Southern cookout alchemy. The kernels got golden, just a little bit chewy, and kissed with flavor that no microwave packet could touch. Grandma would sometimes toss in a pinch of sugar or a dash of black pepper, depending on her mood. And you'd swear you could taste her mood too. Served in a cast iron pan right from the stovetop, it was rustic and proud of it. It went with everything, from hamburgers to tomato slices. And sometimes it was dinner. There's a rhythm to scraping the bits from the bottom of the pan that no nonstick surface can recreate. Nowadays, folks go for frozen or canned corn more often, but this skillet version still lives rent-free in a lot of memories. 3-bean salad, a parade of legumes dressed to impress. 3-bean salad was colorful, crunchy, and just tart enough to make you feel like you were eating healthy, even when your plate already had 2 kinds of pie. Green beans, wax beans, kidney beans, tossed with onion and a sweet sour vinaigrette that practically sang summer. Back then, canned vegetables were a point of pride, not a shortcut. And this salad could sit out all afternoon without losing its dignity, which made it a picnic MVP. It added color to the table and just enough fiber to quiet your conscience. Plus, it was one of the few dishes even the teenage boys didn't scoff at, probably because it didn't wiggle like Jell-O. Some versions had celery seed, others snuck in garbanzo beans, but they never called it chickpeas. These days, folks grab ready-made deli salads, and hey, no shame, but this one had real snap. Macaroni picnic salad. This was the dump it in and stir salad that somehow always turned out right. A box of elbow noodles, a few leftover ingredients, a prayer, and boom, you had enough food to fill a wash tub. It was tangy, creamy, and always served cold, which in July felt like luxury. If it had peas and cheddar cubes, even better. Some versions included ham or chopped egg, and if it was made the night before, heaven. Moms loved it because it was cheap. Kids loved it because it was carbs and mayo. And everyone knew not to question what was in it. Just be grateful it showed up. In the 60s, it wasn't about measurements. It was about instinct and convenience. These days, most folks opt for pre-made tubs from the deli. But back then, macaroni picnic salad came from love and whatever was in the crisper drawer. Coleslaw Supreme. This wasn't just cabbage. It was cabbage with swagger. Coleslaw Supreme had just enough sugar to count as dessert in a pinch, plus a creamy dressing that could soothe any piece of spicy barbecue. The cabbage was shredded by hand, the carrots were grated, and the mayo. Oh, was there mayo? It was crunchy and cold, which made it perfect for hot summer tables. Some versions added pineapple for flair, others stuck to vinegar and celery seed. Either way, it was a necessary contrast to all the meat and starch. In the 50s and 60s, coleslaw wasn't optional. It was expected. And it had to be good. No watery mess, no bitter bite. Just cool, creamy balance. People forget that coleslaw used to be a dish of pride. You knew who brought the good stuff, and you didn't waste your appetite on imposters. These days, you'll find plenty of tubs on supermarket shelves, but they rarely bring the same kick or the same love. Turkey Club Rollups. Long before wraps became a thing at corner delis, there were Turkey Club Rollups. Tortillas or flatbread, smeared with seasoned cream cheese, layered with turkey slices, shredded lettuce, and maybe a bit of crumbled bacon if you were living right. Then rolled tight, sliced into pinwheels, and stabbed with toothpicks like tiny edible Ferris wheels. They looked fancy on a platter and disappeared faster than you could say, "Coolers in the back." Great for feeding a crowd when you'd rather be sitting on a lawn chair than manning the stove. Betty Crocker called them festive finger fare, which is exactly what they were. Festive, functional, and gone before the fireworks started. Nowadays, store-bought wraps do the trick, but there's something about rolling your own that makes cookouts feel like an occasion. Barbecued meatballs. Sticky, saucy, and often suspiciously sweet, barbecued meatballs were the workhorses of any holiday buffet. Made in batches the size of a toddler and simmered in a slow cooker, until the toothpicks practically stood up on their own. The secret was always in the sauce, equal parts ketchup and grape jelly, or sometimes Coca-Cola if you were feeling wild. Don't knock it till you've tried it. Betty Crocker loved this recipe because it let you serve hot food without heating up the kitchen. And that smoky sweet scent? It had a way of pulling every man within 50 yards back to the table for just one more. Today, frozen meatballs and bottled sauce get the job done, but these scratch-made ones were something to remember. Angel Biscuits. Somewhere between a dinner roll and a biscuit, Angel Biscuits rose with yeast, but baked with the flakiness of a pie crust. Buttery, golden, and light as a hymn, they earned their name honestly. You could make them ahead, freeze the dough, and pop them in the oven on the 4th before the parade even started. They were soft enough to cradle honey, sturdy enough to sandwich a piece of sausage, and fancy enough to show up in a bread basket with a doily. If someone brought Angel Biscuits to your cookout, they weren't just a guest, they were family. Red, white, and blue poke cake. This was the dessert that looked like the 4th of July threw a party and invited Cool Whip. A white cake base was poked with holes and filled with red and blue gelatin, then topped with a mountain of whipped topping and fresh berries in flag formation. It was sweet, messy, and unapologetically festive. Every slice looked like a melted firecracker. Betty Crocker ads showed it as an explosion of flavor. And for once, they weren't exaggerating. It was the kind of cake you made in a glass dish just to show off the layers. Patriotic, pastel, and perfectly nostalgic. Watermelon rind pickles. Now, here's a little jar of magic that only Southern grandmas and brave souls remember. Watermelon rind pickles were the sweet and tangy answer to the question, what on earth do we do with all these scraps? Instead of tossing out the rinds after slicing up a summer melon, they'd be peeled, cubed, and slow cooked in a spiced vinegar syrup until they turned glassy and tender, like tiny emerald jewels with a bite. You couldn't rush these. They took hours, sometimes days, and made the whole house smell like cinnamon and curiosity. In the 1960s, no proper holiday spread was complete without at least one pickle tray, and these always sparked the most conversation. You either loved them or politely slid them onto your cousin's plate. But they were a point of pride, a reminder that nothing in a Southern kitchen went to waste. Some folks swore they were better than dessert. Others swore at them. These days, most people toss the rinds without a second thought. But these pickles were a tribute to resourcefulness, patience, and a little sweet surprise on the side. Because in a Betty Crocker kitchen, nothing was wasted, and everything was a chance to surprise. Flag dessert pizza. Nothing says America quite like a sugar cookie pretending to be a pizza. The flag dessert pizza was a joyful, edible craft project straight out of a 1960s Betty Crocker summer issue. A soft sugar cookie crust, spread with a fluffy layer of sweetened cream cheese, then meticulously topped with rows of blueberries and sliced strawberries to make an edible stars and stripes masterpiece. It was part dessert, part art class, and all celebration. Kids loved helping place the fruit, even if their little fingers stole more than they placed. And moms loved how it wowed a crowd without heating up the whole kitchen. Served chilled, it was refreshing and festive, perfect for those sweltering July afternoons. If your family had a Tupperware lid big enough to carry it, you were halfway to legend status. And sure, the strawberries sometimes bled into the cream cheese, and the cookie cracked down the middle on the drive over, but it was beautiful while it lasted. These days, most families pick up a store-bought patriotic sheet cake, but this fruity classic was a homemade firework all its own. Pineapple upside-down cake. There was a time when every good Southern cook kept a can of pineapple rings in the pantry just in case company came calling. And when they did, out came the cast-iron skillet and the jar of maraschino cherries. Pineapple upside-down cake was more than dessert. It was edible drama. You started with melted butter and brown sugar, arranged the fruit like stained glass, and poured the golden batter right over the top. Then came the moment of truth. The flip. One clean turn of the skillet, and there it was. Glistening, caramelized, and smelling like a tropical vacation you didn't have to leave the porch for. In the 50s and 60s, this cake meant celebration. Sunday dinner, church socials, holidays, you name it. It was sweet, sticky, and just a little bit proud of itself. These days, folks might buy pineapple sheet cake from the bakery. But back then, this upside-down beauty was the crown jewel of homemade hospitality. Baked beans with bacon and brown sugar. If any dish could tell a story around the picnic table, it was a bubbling pan of baked beans. Not the kind that came straight from a can, but the kind that got the full Southern treatment. Slow-baked with molasses, brown sugar, a splash of mustard, and of course, a generous layer of crisped-up bacon on top. The smell alone could summon neighbors. You didn't rush baked beans. They had to bubble and thicken like molasses in January. The edges caramelized just enough to make everyone fight over the corners. In the 60s, this dish was a 4th of July essential, one that stuck to your ribs and your memories. Every family had their own twist, and every kid learned the hard way not to eat a full plate before swimming. It was messy, sweet, smoky, and exactly what summer was supposed to taste like. These days, we tend to reach for canned beans at the store, and nobody's judging, but they'll never quite match the ones that cooked slow all afternoon. Homemade lemonade in mason jars. Forget the powdered stuff. Real lemonade came from real lemons. Squeezed by hand, pulp and all, stirred into a big pitcher with sugar you eyeballed and water so cold it gave you brain freeze. In the 60s, no front porch gathering was complete without a sweating mason jar full of sunshine. Maybe your mama floated a few lemon slices on top to show off, or maybe she snuck in a sprig of mint from the garden. Some versions were so tart they made your lips pucker for 3 minutes. Others were mellow and sweet, with just enough tang to feel like a summer breeze in a glass. You drank it barefoot. You spilled it on the picnic blanket, and you went back for seconds because it was just that good. These days, most folks grab a bottle from the fridge case, but real lemonade, made with love and lemon seeds, still tastes like childhood. All right, now that we've paid our respects to the beloved dishes of childhood and beyond, let's shift to the adventurous side of vintage Betty Crocker cooking. Recipes that really had their heyday during 4th of July holidays in the 50s and 60s. Tomato aspic mold. Jiggling its way to the top of every picnic table was the tomato aspic mold. Imagine a tomato juice-based jello filled with chopped celery, green olives, and hard-boiled eggs, served cold on purpose. Popular in the 60s as a refreshing summer side, it had a bold, tangy twang that somehow felt patriotic. Housewives were told it was elegant. Children suspected it was punishment. The visual alone, a ruby red gelatinous ring with floating vegetable bits, was enough to make you rethink freedom. But there it stood, tall and proud, often garnished with parsley sprigs and a whole lot of hope. Its real superpower? It could survive an outdoor buffet table in July without wilting, unlike Aunt Ruth. Frankfurter Crown Roast. The Frankfurter Crown Roast was a culinary optical illusion. You took a dozen hot dogs, stood them upright in a circle, tied them with kitchen twine, and baked them like royalty. Inside the crown, you piled mashed potatoes or baked beans. Your choice of filling, really. It looked impressive in a vaguely Soviet sort of way. This was the Cold War, after all. Maybe they were just trying to scare the neighbors. The 1963 Betty Crocker advert called it a regal touch for your backyard bash, which is code for your mother had 3 kids, a polyester apron, and $5. The whole thing came together in under 20 minutes and got applause every time. Because when you turn hot dogs into architecture, you earn your place in the archives of Americana. Lime cheese salad. Yes, you heard that right. lime. Cheese. Salad. This wonder of mid-century ambition featured lime jello, cottage cheese, crushed pineapple, chopped nuts, and a dash of vinegar. You poured it into a copper mold shaped like a wreath and chilled it until firm, then served it on a bed of iceberg lettuce with mayonnaise. Somehow, it straddled the line between dessert and appetizer with a confidence that can only be described as 1960s. The combination of creamy, tart, and sweet was either oddly satisfying or deeply unsettling. No in-between. Betty Crocker promoted it as a sophisticated choice for get-togethers. You knew someone meant business if they brought the lime cheese salad. And in the South, it often showed up next to fried chicken, like it belonged there. It didn't. But we didn't ask questions back then. And there you have it. 20 forgotten 4th of July recipes from old Betty Crocker cookbooks that no one makes anymore. These are the dishes that once ruled Southern kitchens, each with its own little story, secret ingredient, or just plain quirky charm. So, dust off that old cookbook, fire up the oven, and let's bring a little nostalgia back to the table. Happy 4th of July, y'all.